What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going over a stamina bar that decreases when we sprint, and it will begin refilling when we are not sprinting. So you can see as I'm sprinting, the new green bar on my HUD here that is above the mana bar or the magic bar is decreasing while I sprint. When I stop sprinting, it begins increasing again until it reaches the maximum value at a rate that we define. So we're going to be going over adding this bar to the HUD, the actual stamina system, where we have a rate that it recharges, a rate that it decreases, determining when the system knows to decrease from the bar or refill it, and the minimum and maximum values. We will have an additional episode on this for attacks and potentially things like jumping, and kind of combining all these things together, because we do want different actions to take away from our stamina. Not just sprinting, but probably, again, attacking or jumping may do the same as well. And another thing we could want is a delay between recharging. So say I use up my stamina here. I may have a delay before it refills. It's another thing we'll be covering in the next episode of stamina, because if, say you do an attack and you run out of stamina, okay, you run out entirely, then you probably want to take a second to catch your breath and then allow the stamina bar to refill. It does also punish the player for not keeping a close enough eye on the stamina bar. But anyway, here we go. Let's get started. So we're going to start in the code today, and if you want to catch up on anything that we've done to date in the series, I'll leave the playlist right here in the top right corner. I'll show off every episode that we made prior to this. It'll also show off everything that gets added after this episode. That playlist will stay up to date with every episode in the series, so you can go there and check out any episode that we've made and put into that playlist. Otherwise, I will give you this episode right here in the top right corner. This is all about our sprinting logic and the logic to determine really when we want our stamina to be decreased, because here's where we set up the sprinting, and we're going to want to know if we're sprinting or if we've released the button and we should go back to the walking animation. Alright, and now we're good to get started on the actual logic for today's episode. So I'm going to go into the code, and specifically I'm going to go to our base character class, whatever our character class is for the template, minus third person tutorial character. We're going to make actually a bunch of stuff for today's episode, because the system can be complex if we want it to. But before we get into anything new, there is one other thing that I actually want to do, and that is update this is sprinting Boolean to be editable and tracked in the blueprint. Believe it or not, we actually only had this bool is sprinting available in the code before, and we never actually used it in the state machine or anything because we were going off of speeds and using a blend space, and that's perfectly fine. However, in the case of this, where we want to track if the character is specifically in the sprinting state, then we're going to want a Boolean or an enum to track this value. We don't have enough character states yet in here to justify an enum, so I'm going to add a Boolean called is sprinting, and this is how we are going to determine if the character should be draining their stamina or not. So you may have had the Boolean like I did, but we never made it available in the blueprint. We're not actually going to be using it in the blueprint today, but I want to be able to track the value so we can see it, because I'd like to show you what is happening behind the scenes with these variables in a demo. I think that'll help explain all the variables that we make today. So something minor, but I'd suggest doing that now so that you can see it in a little bit, in a few minutes when we get to that part. Okay? Now, I'm going to go down to my floats, and I'm going to add a bunch of different floats here. I'm actually going to add 4 different variables. So I have a current stamina variable. So the current stamina is the amount of stamina the character currently has. So what this means is if we have used half of our stamina, we've run for 50% of the time we can run, we only have 50% left, our current stamina is 0.5, basically a ratio of 0 to 1. Okay, so it's how much stamina do we have remaining. We also are going to want max stamina, which is the maximum amount of stamina the character can have at once. This is important to make a variable if your stamina can ever change. So say you can upgrade your stamina, you can upgrade how long you can run for, how many attacks you can use in a row, update your endurance, whatever it is that you want to do. If this value can change, you definitely want to track it out to a variable, because we are going to be using it not only in the progress bar, but also if we want to display our character's stats, we'll want to know what that value is. All right. Then we have the stamina sprint usage rate. This is a very specific variable in terms of its name, so let me explain. This is the rate stamina is used when sprinting. So what this means is if the stamina is going down when the character is sprinting, we have to choose what the rate is. Now, some characters, if you have multiple characters in your game, some characters could use their stamina bar faster than others. They could run for a shorter duration than others. This is because their usage rate could differ between these characters. This could also be something that gets upgraded. So say you upgrade your endurance, maybe this is what changes. Not necessarily your maximum stamina, but the rate that you have. You could change either or both. However, we do need at least one solid rate to use, even if it can't change. We're going to need a rate that we can actually apply this at. Otherwise, it's going to take it all at once. We don't want to just lose our entire stamina bar at one time. You know, you press sprint for 1 frame, and it takes your entire stamina bar. That's not what we want. So we do need a rate. We also need a recharge rate. These can be the same if you want, the usage rate and the recharge rate. It's up to you. I allow them to be different. My recharge rate is actually faster than my usage rate. But, again, that's up to personal preference. Now, before we do anything with these variables, you may have noticed I have 2 commented out variables here. I have delay for stamina recharge. And this is what I was talking about. This is what we'll go over in the next episode on stamina. But if you'd like to get started, here's a little sneak peek on what we're going to be doing. We're going to have a time that it takes once your stamina has run out before it can begin refilling. You know, maybe 2 seconds or something. You kind of punish the player, say you run out of stamina, you need to catch your breath before we will begin recharging it. I also had a Boolean up here called can stamina recharge. And what this does is it determines if we can actually recharge stamina or if we are not ready yet. You could also use this to check, so say you can't recharge stamina while doing certain actions, like while we're in the middle of an attack we can't, while we're sprinting we can't, or maybe while we're taking damage we can't, then we want to make sure that is false and we want to stop stamina from recharging. Not using them today, but they will come into play next time. If you want to play around with them, then feel free. Alright. There's another thing we have to do in this file. We need to override the character's tick function. So the tick function runs every single frame, and it's a function that's in the character class, the parent of this class. As you can see, if I scroll up to the top here, this is our class. This is the class that it derives from. This is the A character class, which is Unreal's class, okay? So the character class has a tick function in it. And basically every frame it can do logic that needs to be done constantly. We can use this tick function to determine how much of our stamina bar should be decreased based on not only something like the actor's tick rate, but also how much time has passed and how much progress essentially has been either taken from the stamina bar or added back to it when it's filling back up. So the tick function is a perfect place for this. And the way you get the tick function is we're not making a new function, we're overriding a function that already exists in a parent class. So to do that, it's like this. Instead of just doing like void tick with a parameter, this is how you override. You do virtual, and you do the return type, which is void, the name of the function, the parameter list, and then the keyword override. So virtual void tick float delta time override. You have to do void tick float delta time here like this because the parent function has float delta time. So you can't skip this parameter. You're going to need it regardless. This is overriding the parent function for this. When you override a function, it allows us to call it in this child class, or rather it allows us to define the logic that's going to happen in this child class. We'll get to filling this out in a second, but make sure you do put this in your header file. Now go to your third-person tutorial character.cpp, and we're going to fill out all of our variables and their default values. Okay, so for me, I picked some arbitrary values, but I'll explain what they mean. So I have current stamina, which is 1.0 right here. Okay, that means that our current stamina is going to start at the default value of 1.0. 1.0 is a ratio. Remember, we're thinking of stamina as from 0.0 to 1.0, from 0% to 100%. So it's a ratio between 0 and 1. So current stamina should really equal max stamina when max stamina can change and upgrade in the future. But for right now, I'm leaving max stamina as 1.0, and we don't have a way to upgrade that, so it can stay like this for now to keep things simple. Now max stamina also needs a value. I'm saying the highest that we can go right now is 1.0. It's kind of already established, but again, as things can be upgraded and stats can be changed, that's where this is going to come into play. So for now, we're just going to set current stamina and max stamina to 1.0. Now, these usage rates and the recharge rates are where you can change it and customize it. So the usage rate is how fast this bar is going to drop while the character is sprinting. So at that rate, it's going to be relatively slow at draining the stamina bar. I've doubled the value to 0.1, so we have 0.05 and 0.1. So the recharge will be twice as fast as the usage rate. All right. Now, the way we're handling the sprint is very simple. We have a sprint and a stop sprinting function. They both get called when either we're pressing the sprint button or releasing the sprint button. So if we go to those functions really quickly, make sure that your functions do look like this or some variation of this. It's very simple what we did. We have our blend space allowing us to change the animations, but internally the logic is we were printing a log just to show that we were sprinting or not sprinting. Now we want to make sure we're using this Boolean if we haven't been already. We were for a bit, and then it didn't really matter because for the animation we were just using the speed of the character. But as far as tracking the state and where we should take our stamina, we want to be tracking this Boolean and determining if the character is sprinting or not. So just make sure you set in sprint is sprinting to be true, and in stop sprinting set is sprinting to be false. The rest of the stuff in those functions is fine. Alright, and then let's scroll down, and I like putting tick at the bottom so I can always find it and access it, but you can put it wherever you want, but we're going to have to fill out this tick function. So go ahead and add this function to your CPP file, and then we're going to fill out this logic here. So let me explain what's going on here. So in tick, again, this is called every frame. It does logic every single frame. We need to determine if the character is currently sprinting or not. And then we want to either take away from the stamina that the character currently has or refill the stamina to reach the point that the character can have as a maximum. So it's either going towards 0.0 or 1.0, meaning it's going toward the minimum value, 0, or the maximum value, 1. If we are sprinting, we're using our stamina, so we're heading towards 0. If we're not sprinting, then I'm allowing us to refill our stamina, so we're heading toward 1. Now let's look at this function and what it actually does. I have this function fmath : finterp constant 2. Now I know this is something you probably haven't seen before if you're not familiar with a lot of the fmath functions. So regardless of if it's taking from the stamina or refilling the stamina, we're doing the same thing. We're just going to change the direction it's going and the rate that it's doing this. So the first thing I do is I see if we're sprinting or not. If this character is sprinting, we want to take from it. So we need to set our current stamina equal to the result that comes from this function. We're going to pass in to the current our current stamina. So this is where we're starting from. Our target is 0.0, meaning this is the point we're trying to reach assuming these conditions stay the same. Essentially, we're going to keep decreasing from current until it reaches the target. So current down to target, if this is full, this is 1.0, and the target is 0, we can sprint from the time that we are at 1.0 all the way down to 0.0. Okay? Then there's the delta time to keep track of how much time has passed and how much should be removed from this value. Delta time has tick passed into it, so we can simply use the delta time in this function here. Then you need the rate at which you want to decrease from that value, or increase that value. In this case, we're decreasing it. So I want to pass in my stamina sprint usage rate as the rate. Okay? So this determines what the new value for current stamina is and sets it equal to this. Now the alternative, else, is if we are not sprinting. If we're not sprinting, we also want to check and see if the current stamina is less than max stamina. You don't technically have to do this, but doing this will make us avoid this extra function call and this extra performance gain by simply skipping this if this is not needed to be done. But if it is, say current stamina is less than max stamina, that means we need to actually start raising our stamina again, start refilling our bar. So if that's the case, we want to set our current stamina to this function call again, passing in current stamina as the starting point. Max stamina is now our target. So if we're at 0.5 current stamina, our max stamina is 1.0, so we're trying to reach that value. We have delta time that we have to pass into it, and then we have our stamina recharge rate passed in here. Now once you do this, you're good to go. You will be able to run your game, and that value should work perfectly fine. You'll be able to run around and watch your values here in your world outliner if you click on base character and scroll down to stamina. So I have is sprinting here, and I have my 4 stamina values here. You can see is sprinting is true when I click the sprinting key or input. When I release it, it's false. And you can see the current stamina value down at the bottom there is increasing or decreasing as it should. Okay. Now there are a few things that we can definitely do to clean this up that we will be covering, but feel free to get a head start. So one, we have is sprinting based on just holding this button. So if I'm simply holding the sprint key, even if I'm not moving, it doesn't trigger me, it doesn't put me into the sprint state. Because of that, it probably should not be taking my stamina, but it does at the current time. When I release, it still refills, so it's fine, but that should be adjusted to only work if we're moving when we are sprinting, you know, when we have the sprint button held. And the other thing is, nothing actually happens once we reach a current stamina of 0. We could call stop sprinting, and that would do the trick. But there's really no punishment now. So if I run around, you can watch it in the bottom right there. You can see that the value is decreasing. And it's about to hit 0. Now it's at 0, but I can still sprint forever. So what you can do is check and make sure that your current stamina is greater than 0. And if it's not, call stop sprinting. Very simple logic that you can do. But I'm going to show you a bunch of cool stuff we can do with, triggering stamina to stop refilling and triggering us to lose stamina when we take a hit and different things like that. So we're going to get a lot more advanced than we are now. I'm just pointing out some of the things that we're going to need to adjust in the future in case you want to go ahead and get a head start. All right. At this point, we want to go into our widgets and we want to go to our HUD, or our character HUD, as I call it. And I've just added a new progress bar that is thinner than the others. No reason in particular. I just thought that these bars were kind of bulky. We don't need 4 of them. So we had our magic, our health, our experience, and now we have our stamina bar. So what I actually did was copy one of the progress bars and paste it and just move it. But you can also just grab a progress bar and drag it in. Very simple. Once you have brought it in, make sure that you change the name of it. I do have it set as a variable. This is all positioning stuff, so most likely yours will be different. The percent can be 0 if you want. It doesn't matter because we are going to bind it, but I like to leave it at 1.0 so I can see what it looks like on the HUD here. And then I changed my fill color and opacity to the color I wanted, which was green. But the most important part here is under the progress section where we were just at with the percent, we want to hit the bind button that will be here and hit create binding. Once you do that, it will take you into the event graph in a function. And it makes up a custom name based on the name of the widget that you chose and what type of binding it is. So I have get stamina bar %1 here. All right. Now, don't be confused by this get stamina bar %0 here. We don't need that one right now. This is our stamina bar. This is what we care about for today. Okay? So no confusion there. Stamina bar is the green one. Mana bar is the blue one. We don't care about that for now. We care about the stamina bar. Alright, so in our stamina bar binding that we have, all we want to do is determine how much stamina the character has left. We're doing it a very simple way for now. And it's just like this. We're just getting the initial character. Okay? This will only really work if you have one character indexed here. We'll need to use other characters in the future, so this will change. But for now, we only have one, so this is perfectly fine. We need to cast it and make sure it can be our class that has our variables that we need. And then we can grab our current stamina and our maximum stamina. And we can divide one by the other. Yes, division is typically slow compared to a lot of the other options, but this is the easiest way to handle this because we take the current, divide it by the maximum, and we get how much stamina is remaining. Then we just pass this into a return node, which I have up here. So this is how I wrote this entire binding. It's literally that simple. Once you do that now, your stamina will be reflected in the progress bar on your HUD. So now when you play the game, you should see the progress bar actually updating with the values of your stamina for your character. We're going to call this armor bar because that's what this is. This is actually representing like our shield. And so basically we were showing off that you could take damage from your shield instead of your health. I have to remember, I think it was the red ones that did it. There you go. So that was the point of that. So don't be confused by the old naming. I didn't realize it was called stamina bar still. That should really be like our armor bar or whatever. But the green one's all we care about. I just didn't want you being confused by the names. So I renamed it now. But anyway, guys, that's all I got. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else you can do. I really appreciate it. Lets me know that I'm doing a good job and you guys are enjoying the series, which is the best thing that I could hear. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon supporters and subscribers. Thank you guys for the love and support. Thank you for everything that you do. I really appreciate you going the extra mile. It makes me happier than you know, and I'm really, really grateful for that. So thank you so much. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. I'd be happy to assist you and get any of those issues sorted for free. But otherwise, guys, that's all I got for you. So like I said, thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.